The Epstein files have just dropped another bombshell wave in February 2026. British politicians are all over the latest Department of Justice and FBI releases. Peter Mandleson's creepy Downing Street meetings with Epstein during Blair's time, Nigel Farage popping up in Epstein-adjacent far-right circles, Toby Young of the Free Speech Union linked through London elite networks with Zionist connections, and Tommy Robinson mentioned a cheap at any price in what looks like a recruitment or asset note. These aren't ancient rumours, they're fresh drops from ongoing investigations comparing the Department of Justice court documents with FBI intelligence reports, and I held off until more details emerged in the last week so I could get the full, unfiltered picture instead of half-baked speculation like a lot of people have with these recent leaks. So let's dive into it. February 2026, British names are front and centre again. We're talking Mandelson's Epstein's ties while he was a key Blair advisor, Farage and Epstein linked far-right meetings, Toby Young's Free Speech Union connections through London social circles with strong Zionist ties, and Tommy Robinson labelled as cheap at any price in what seems like a dismissive or low-value asset note. I'll compare the Department of Justice court releases, unredacted victims, statements, names, emails, fight logs, etc., with the FBI intelligence reports to show the differences. The Department of Justice likes to focus on the legal evidence for prosecutions, but with the FBI on a broader blackmail and influence operations. So why now? Ongoing probes into Epstein's enablers with new witnesses, leaks, and unsealed documents surfing. This matters because these figures are still in power or influence, with no mass arrests have actually been conducted yet, or at least with Mandleson he is being investigated, and as well him advising Starmer. Farage leading reform, Young shaping free speech debates. Let's unpack the names, the files, and why this reeks of elite protection racket. The first two main sources, the Department of Justice files, are primarily from 2024 to 2026, unsealed documents in Virginia Garieff's civil case against Ghislaine Maxwell and related suits, emails, flight logs, and victim dispositions, as well as redacted witness statements. Their legal focus had in abuse, trafficking, and who enabled it. The FBI files from ongoing criminal investigations post-Epstein death in 2019, include intelligence reports, informant tapes and surveillance logs, and network analysis, broader, often more speculative, looking at the leverage, blackmail potential, and the long-term influence operations. The key differences were that the Department of Justice in public, waves of unredacted releases between 2025 and 2026, and evidence-based for court. For example, with the direct context like the Mandleson emails lobbying for Downing Street meetings in 2005 during Blair's premiership. FBI reports dig deeper into Epstein's surveillance operation to compromise the powerful, mentioning Farage in 2018, Bannon Regs Mogg Johnson meeting tied to Epstein-funded influence circles, though denied by reform. The Department of Justice has victim allegations against Prince Andrew, with 173 mentioned abuse claims, and the FBI notes cheap at any price on Tommy Robinson when there was a leaked screenshot between Steve Bannon and Epstein talking about how Tommy is quote a saviour, or at least reference, saying that he's paid at any price, meaning that this insinuates or implies that even he is even bought off. Perhaps a code for easy recruitment, low-value asset in far-right monitoring, or dismissive comment on his usefulness. Even rich billionaire paedophiles know he's paid off. Toby Young appears in the FBI intel via Epstein's Little Black Book, associates a London elite event with strong Zionist connections through his Free Speech Union work and his pro-Israel advocacy, raising questions about overlapping networks. Department of Justice is narrower, proverbial crimes, and the FBI, influence and blackmail operations. Together, they paint a picture of British elites as Epstein pawns or targets. British names in the detail to do with Mandleson, Farage, and Toby Young with his Zionist ties, as well as Tommy Robinson being cheap at any price. I would say that with Peter Mandleson was a massive hit to the Labour Party, and the Department of Justice emails from 2005 show Mandleson lobbying for Epstein meetings in Downing Street during Blair's premiere. Epstein visited number 10 multiple times, and Mandleson was a close friend, pushing access. FBI reports suggest Epstein used these ties for influence. Mandelson's ongoing include island trips, dinners, and financial dealings with Epstein-linked funds. As a Labour grandee, still advising Starmer in 2026, this is explosive. The Met is reviewing the leaks. Peer-interviewed, Mandleson denies wrongdoing, old news perhaps, but the stench lingers. A guy linked to a pedo trafficking advising the Prime Minister? That's a definition of elite protection racket. To do with Nigel Farage, mentioned in the FBI intel on far-right networks, in 2018, meeting with the Steve Bannon, Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Boris Johnson tied to Epstein's surveillance of funding streams for anti-EU campaigns, though this was denied by Nigel, saying that Nigel never met Bannon with them. The Department of Justice has no direct Epstein link, but FBI notes Farage as peripheral in Epstein-funded influence circles. As Reform leader polling high in 2026, this is ammo for critics accusing him of far-right ties. And then there's Toby Young's Free Speech Union. The FBI's little black book associates lists Young through London social events with Epstein enablers. The Department of Justice has no direct mention, however, but his Free Speech Union defended Epstein links figures in free speech cases. Some strong Zionist connections, pro-Israel advocacy, and the free speech campaigns against anti-Semitism definitions critics call overboard, and ties to pro-Zionist donors raise questions about overlapping network. Young denies any Epstein link, but the proximity fuels speculation about influence ops in free speech circles. If you're fighting censorship but linked to Epstein-adjacent networks, people will ask questions, especially with Zionist funding often accused of shaping narratives. A note or email labels Robinson cheap at any price, perhaps dismissing him as a low-cost asset, easy to manipulate in far-right ops, or low-value intelligence terms. FBI reports link him to Epstein-adjacent funding for anti-Islam campaigns. Robinson calls it a smear, or has even kept quiet about the Epstein files, especially after they're released. It's a bit odd how someone like Tommy Robinson, who is anti-Islam campaign, but then doesn't call out anything that has Zionist or Jewish or even Mossad connection and ties, and especially raising connections about his backers and whether he was a useful idiot in broader networks. And paint a bigger picture in 2026, especially with these files aren't finished. In February 2026, release from ongoing probes, the Department of Justice versus Maxwell appeals, FBI Epstein network digs, keep coming. And the reason I deleted this video was because I wanted to make sure that a lot more came out, and also some very weird stuff to do with Prince Andrew and a few other weird pictures that were found in the files. At least Elon can console himself. The files confirm he wasn't invited to Epstein's parties, but man, what an actual loser. The world's richest guy missed the elite pedo club, probably because he was too busy tweeting memes and buying Twitter. But seriously, Musk's absence is a win for him at least, because unlike these Brits that are tangled in this web, in 2026, with Labour under Starmer and Mandleson being his advisor, as well to do with Farage's reform, it fuels distrust, especially to do with these elites, with these traffickers, whilst also lecturing up. So anyway guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video about me talking about the Epstein files, and again, like I said, sorry that I've delayed this, but I wanted to make sure there's even more evidence that's coming out, as I said earlier in this video, and a few of the details. And obviously going over and reading the files, like, so for example, a lot of people have found some very weird stuff, and obviously some people said that the FBI stuff was apparently, like, a lot of the stuff was quite apparently faked or something, especially to do with Donald Trump raping someone. But I think that was mentioned even in the Department of Justice, if I can remember correctly. But I just think that when it comes down to this elite pedo protection racket, and especially to do with Epstein, I do think that it kind of shows that a lot of the other people, not just British politicians but also US, to do with also maybe big tech influencers, like for example Elon, who basically runs Tesla, You know, he didn't even get invited on because I think even in the emails, I think even Glitchstein was like, oh wow, this guy's like such a weirdo and such a big loser. And I just thought it was very funny that even the pedos didn't even like him and just thought he was a weird loser. Especially because he's like trying to create a dynasty, and he's trying to basically expand and expunge his DNA and as many women he can get his hands on. So I guess when it comes down to the pedo island, he's not seen as like, even with all that money and power, he still didn't get invited to this island. I mean, even a cripple like Stephen Hawking got invited on, which I've seen a couple of memes where Stephen Hawking's like being picked. There's this one, it reminds me of Megamind, where like Megamind's like bullied at school, and even like I think one of the disabled kids gets picked, and it's like the meme format of there's like Elon as Megamind, and then there's the disabled person as Hawking. And I've seen some like really like funny memes about it, where it's basically just kind of just shows like a lot of how corrupt the governments are, and how like all these people are just basically just like pawns in all of their own bigger game. Even I guess the people that are supposed to be on our side are basically in cahoots. Now, obviously, too, with Farage, I don't think he is exactly, you know, guilty by default, because he was just mentioned. And when I was looking for the files, it said to do with far-right circles, like he wanted to create like an operation or something, and the elites knew about this. So maybe that implies that they're not controlling it, but they know about the operations. Maybe there's some leak there. Maybe there's some like MI5 files that we haven't seen before. But yeah, we'll probably just have to wait and see. But yeah, I still don't trust Farage. I think that even him just being mentioned in the files, let alone, I guess, to do with leading polling, I just think that people just being led on like cattle. But again, I won't talk about him as much. And Robinson, I'm pretty sure, well, even the elites knew it was paid off. And when it was saying that cheap at any price, I mean, it's ironic that I saw Steve Laws talk about him being mentioned, especially to do with Zuma. They were ragging him on why it was mentioned that he was bought at any price. It's ironic he gives that, considering he's also being paid by sponsors, which we don't know about. But again, yeah, despite him kicking off at us during the Herman drama, I do think that, yeah, these people are basically pieces of shit, and they're all out it for themselves. And especially to do with these files, you know, these like people that I mentioned, I do think that, yeah, they're all in just one big club, and they're basically just, you're not invited. And as well, if you want to click on the link in the description below with links to other channels, and also to do my Discord as well.